Good morning and welcome to the Orgasm Hour live Q&A. I'm Dr. Suzanne Mulvehill, clinical sexologist, orgasmologist, and your host, your guide to help you with orgasmic learning and identifying and developing orgasmic learning pathways. So, welcome to today's podcast, our second episode in the question and answers, where we're going to talk today about how to get out of your head during sex. And this topic came up last week during our first show about orgasmic difficulty, like why so many women have orgasmic difficulty. And today we are going to welcome. I see someone's here. Thank you. Today we're going to go into a little deeper about well, first, let's take a look at the problem and then strategies for solving it. And I want to also share that we are aware that the chat, there's a delay in the chat. So that means that I don't get your answer, your question immediately. So just know that going into this and setting up a guideline for that. Okay, so I'll start with, I always like to start with the research. Like, what does the research say? Because there's so much information out there that can be disorienting in terms of, especially around sex and sexuality. So let's start with the research paper. Okay, I got a couple papers here, and I'm going to bring up the first one on cognitive distraction. So we're going to spend about 10 minutes about talking about the problem itself so that we understand what the problem is made of. So here, just one second, I'm going to go, here we go. Okay, so this first study that we're taking a look at is by two researchers in the year 2000 on cognitive distraction and women's sexual functioning. And here you can see there were 74 women in this study. And past research on the role of cognitive distraction and sexual dysfunction, it is typically focused on males. And again, here we switched the research. And by the way, I don't know if you know, but the US government didn't require that women were involved in research studies until around 1994. So we're still catching up on women's research and in general in women's research, and also with regards to sexual functioning, which is why it says the past research has focused on males. So I'll try to highlight this as you see where I am. So this was a study of young adult women. There were 74 of them with sexual experience. And the bottom line here regarding cognitive distraction and their sexuality, these women who reported greater cognitive distraction during sexual activity with a partner also reported lower sexual, we call it self-esteem, lower, like feeling good about ourselves during sex. And that actually gives me like the chills when I think about that. As one who suffered for many years with orgasm difficulty, saw 4 different sex therapists over that time, and healed basically through the use of cannabis, which is another whole stream of my work. But today we're going to focus on like what are the distractions and then how strategies to solve them. And cannabis will be one of them. So here, the bottom line is more cognitive distraction, less consistent orgasms, higher incidences of, well, let's just say faking orgasm. Here we have pretending orgasm, even after the woman's general affect sexual desire, general self-focus, despite her her desire, her focus, her sexual attitudes, and body dissatisfaction were statistically controlled. So what that means is when you control these things, that it was clearly that the cognitive distraction was causing the sexual functioning problems. Okay, and we can all say, you know what? We know that. Okay, so that's one. Let's take a look at one more here. This one I used a lot in my research. Let me pull up this screen. This particular study is in my dissertation. the role of cognitive distraction on female orgasm in particular. So you just may have noticed that the last study was specifically about female sexual function. This one goes a step deeper into looking specifically at orgasm, which is what our topic is today, and what's interfering. So let's take a look here. Excuse me. Distraction or interference in the cognitive processing of erotic stimulus plays an important role in the development of sexual dysfunctions or difficulties. So, you know, we know that. And I think some of the pressure, like if we were to develop a prevention for female orgasm difficulty, that's one of my late papers that I'm going to do in the future, because we can prevent these. I see many women 20 years old, 18, 19, 20, early in their sexual experience, myself included, when I was 18, 19, 20, realizing that they're having a problem with orgasm. And realizing that, for example, one woman last week talked about how she endures pain during intercourse so her partner can have his orgasm. So we're the pressure for her. So that's another side of this. But the aim of this study was to evaluate the negative automatic thoughts present during sexual activity. There were 191 women in this study. The orgasm function was measured by the Female Sexual Function Index. For those of you who are interested in knowing that, that is a validated instrument that evaluates 6 domains of sexual functioning. So what they found was that they measured automatic thoughts, and that was measured with something. And let's just go to the findings. The findings indicated that a lack of erotic thoughts during sexual activity was the best predictor of women's sexual difficulties. I mean, that literally gives me like chills. I'm going to read it again. Findings indicated that the lack of erotic thoughts during sexual activity was the best predictor of women's sexual difficulties. So that tells us right off the bat that what do we need to work on is accessing erotic thought. And we're going to talk about how we do that and how to create the conditions to stimulate erotic thought. Now, I can tell you that in my experience of having orgasm difficulty, I had no erotic thoughts. Zero. My focus was specifically on that goal of orgasm. I had to retrain myself, retrain myself. So it's important to know as we go through this podcast today, through this Q&A, that orgasm can be learned, like the patterns can be learned, unlearned, and relearned. So when we think about that, we learned something, we may need to unlearn them, and we are going to relearn them. That is how we're going to train our brain. It's about training your brain. And because I hear women say, oh, I tried cannabis once, it didn't work. Oh, I tried meditation once, it didn't work. Oh, I tried this, it didn't work. Oh, I tried my toy, it didn't work. No, shift the focus to training your brain. So I'm starting to move already into the actual, the strategies for overcoming all of this chatter. Because there's, in another show, we will do the brain states, the frequencies of the brain that allow for imagination. When we're in our cognitive thinking brain, when we're in our, it's called our prefrontal cortex. When we're in our prefrontal cortex, that's our executive functioning of the brain. That's the part that says, you're going too slow. Oh, you're going too fast. Oh, am I gonna orgasm? Oh, you know what? I'm getting a little scared. Oh, that's the monitoring part of our brain that even won't let women go further when they're feeling a lot of stimulation. So the key is to learn how to quiet that part of the brain that wants to keep us in our executive functioning. Look, we're in executive functioning pretty much all day long, every day, from raising children, going to work, checking our apps. We're in our cognitive function regularly. And I can tell you that in my own personal experience, when I started to retrain myself with cannabis in a structured, intentional way to bring safety into my body and to relearn that my brain did not like giving up the cognitive control. It was like, are we done yet? Like when I would be high on cannabis, it was like, okay, like how long do we have to hang out here? Like I really had a lot of training to do to the point that to teach my brain to enjoy quiet, to enjoy calm, for my body to trust me, because my body didn't trust me. And think about the situation with the woman that I just shared with you who is letting her partner penetrate her while she's in pain. What message is she sending to her body? Her body is sending her brain, look, we don't try, she's overriding her body's language. Her body's saying, this is painful. And she's saying, yeah, we're going to endure it for his orgasm. That logic doesn't work for her orgasm. It doesn't work for anyone's orgasm. So the other woman I read about, in a Reddit thread recently, who talked about how her boyfriend puts the lube on and starts jackhammering away. Okay. She has a voice, and this is another piece that's going to be important to know going forward. And I'm just going to kind of in a stream of consciousness sharing this with you is to use your voice. When you feel that you are starting to go starting to feel numb, you're noticing, for example, that and this, I'm speaking from my own experience, that penetration is starting to just feel like your vagina is starting to feel like rubber. That's happened to me, where it just feels like I'm not feeling anything, just the friction. That's the sign to say, you know what, we got to stop for a minute. And we're not trained, ladies, to stop. We're trained to allow. We're trained and we're conditioned to the two shares I just shared. These were young women, newly sexually active, who are already in their conditioning, not knowing that they were in their conditioning to allow their partner to finish before she did. Okay, or before she did, to have their orgasm even though they're having pain. And do you know that they've added now a pain disorder, a pain penetration disorder, to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders? It's in the 5th edition TR, which was published in 2022. I've got to go back, and if we have time, we could even check today. But maybe I'll post it in the chat after. Is that a new disorder? Because to me, that's showing that we're conditioned this way, and that the young 18 women who are becoming sexually active have been conditioned to allow themselves to not use their voice in sexual activity. Okay, so let's get back to this. So here we're looking at this study about cognitive distraction and findings indicating that a lack of erotic thoughts during sexual activity, I mentioned, was the best predictor of women's sexual difficulties. Sexual abuse, thoughts of failure. Let's highlight, let's keep going. Sexual abuse, which very high rate of childhood sexual abuse and lots of sexual abuse. Men have it too, but women have it, I think, I don't know what rate, quite a bit higher. Sexual abuse thoughts, failure and disengagement thoughts, partner's lack of affection, sexual passivity. That's what I was talking to about, the guy putting the lube on and jackhammering away. That's her sexual passivity. And control and lack of erotic thoughts were significantly higher in women with orgasm difficulties compared to sexually healthy women. So I'm going to read that again. Sexual thoughts, failure and disengagement thoughts, partner's lack of affection, sexual passivity and control, and lack of erotic thoughts were significantly higher in women with orgasm difficulties compared to sexually healthy women. The results supported the literature indicating that cognitive distraction from erotic thoughts is strongly associated with orgasmic dysfunction. So let me bring it back. I'm going to close that one for a minute and bring it back to just being here with you for a minute, because that's a lot to hold, and for our bodies to sense that we've learned all of this, that all of this cognitive noise, for lack of a better word, has been learned. And now we're going to practice unlearning it. So now that we know what the problem is in terms of the cognitive distraction and what what facilitates that, if you will, with sexual abuse and disassociation and the sexual passivity. Let's go into another study. This one is going to be by Kontula and Mietinen. Osmo Kontula is a Finnish sexual female orgasm researcher out of Finland, and he and his research partner um, prepared a study called The Determinants of Female Orgasm, and it was a longitudinal study of Finnish women. And I'm going to pull this one up for you. This was published in 2016. And it's a really, I find it to be an excellent study on many premises. And this one you can actually download yourself for free. Many of the studies cannot be downloaded without paying. And there are ways, shadow libraries that probably legally I'm not allowed to tell you about, but they do exist, and you can do your research on that. Okay, so let me pull up this study so we can look at what does determine female orgasm. Excuse me. All right, here we go. So this was a study in Finland. We'll just look at what the design was. They were aged 18 to 79. This was 2025. There were 2,150 women in this study. Actually, another data set of 2,049 women in the age group of 18 to 70 was collected via a national study. So here's the results. Contrary to expectation, women did not have orgasms that are more frequent by increasing their experience or practice of masturbation or by experimenting with different partners in their lifetime. So let's just stop there. What does that actually mean? Contrary, they were expecting that women who were having more frequent experiences of masturbation and practice or experimenting with different partners was going to help women orgasm. So the fact that that is not a predictor tells you that it's not something that's outside ourselves, right? That tells us that it's something within, whether it's internal blocks or internal access. Let's keep going. The keys to their more frequent orgasms lay in mental and relationship factors. So this goes exactly to what we were just talking about the mental factors. Okay, of having the mind in the right place, right? We just talked about cognitive distraction. Now we're going to talk about what these mental factors are. So these factors and capacities included orgasm importance, sexual desire, sexual self-esteem. There it is again. We saw it in another study about the opposite of this. In fact, we saw sexual passivity in the study on cognitive distraction. Women who had more cognitive distraction had more sexual passivity. So it's almost like we're going to have to learn our way out of this, like become uncomfortable to tell our partner, I need to stop for a minute. No penetration yet. I'm not ready. Like feeling that in your body. No, I'm not ready. Or we need to stop for a minute. And one of the best ways to actually start practicing these new behaviors is setting the container before you even start. So if you do looking at sex practice instead of the Olympics of sex, right? So each time we have sex, we just go and have this sexual, experience and then it's finished. No, this time before it begins, go into it very consciously and set a container. And by a container, what do I mean? A container meaning setting the guidelines for your experience. Okay. So I want, and you can ask for what you want. We're not going to have any penetration in this sexual practice. I'm just giving you a hypothetical. And it's one from my own experience, actually, with a sex practice with a man that I was in sex practice with. He didn't want any kissing. This was somebody that I wasn't in a relationship. It was for practice. Now you can do this with your partner, if you're in a long-term relationship or if you're in a relationship and you say, you know what, let's set a container for the sex. And you do this right before, not the day before or 2 days before, so that it's fresh. But as the desire is rising, or before the desire rises, and you go into it with with cognition, with your awareness, you set the container. These are the guidelines. These are the things that I would like. I would like to focus on just on sensation, and if it becomes too much, I want to let you know, and I'm going to ask you to stop. And he can ask for his own. You can do it. You can focus on one or the other or both during your session. So setting a container. Okay, let's keep going. So these factors and capacities include, we talked about that, orgasm importance, sexual desire, sexual self-esteem, and openness of sexual communication with partners. So we were just talking about that there's communication. So this is bringing my mind to something a family member actually had told me. She goes, sex used to be with her partner really great. And now there's really no talking. He just like kind of gets on top of me and we have sex and it's over. And she's not questioning it. She's not saying, what do we need to do to fix this? She's just going along with it. And I've heard this more than one time, and I know there are couples who don't even have sex anymore. I would think that these are kind of the pathways to not having sex when this kind of allowing of sexual passivity is going on. Okay, so let's keep going. So these factors and capacities, including orgasm importance, sexual desire, sexual self-esteem, and openness of sexual communication with partners. Women, this is the kicker. Let's just highlight this all by itself. And if I could highlight this in red, I would. Women valued their partner's orgasm more than their own. Just sit with that for a second. Feel what that feels for men who may watch this, for women who are watching this or who watch this after this live presentation goes on the web. Women valued their partner's orgasm more than their own. So this brings me back to the two women I shared with you in the beginning, the one who allowed her partner to put the lube on and start jackhammering away, her exact words, and the other woman who allowed herself to have pain during penetration so her partner could have his orgasm. No, please stop doing that, ladies. Please, I'm inviting you to join me in building your sexual confidence so that we don't allow ourselves to be violated, because you know what's happening? The violation is happening. We're doing it to ourselves. It's internalized. This statement, women valued their partner's orgasm more than their own, is the conditioning that we've been raised in, the culture we've been raised in. It speaks volumes. That 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 words speaks volumes. In addition, here we go. There's even more. This is one of the most important studies of reviewing more than 1,000 more than 1,000 journal articles for my dissertation. This particular study was one of the most important and impactful. And because this was about sexual female orgasm, not just female orgasm, because there's another whole side of research that is under recognized of women being able to orgasm through non-genital stimulation. And we'll talk about that in a later episode of Orgasmic Learning Pathways. Cannabis is one of the pathways with statistically significant improvements in orgasm frequency, ease, and satisfaction for women who have difficulty orgasming during partnered sex. That's my study. That was my dissertation research that I did with Dr. Jordan Tischler, my dissertation advisor and research partner. In addition, let's keep going. Positive determinants were the ability to concentrate. So now we're going back to exactly what we're talking about of how do you get out of your mind during sex? The ability to concentrate. So we're going to talk about how do we develop the ability to concentrate, mutual sexual initiations, and partners' good sexual techniques. So yes, that does mean the partners need good sexual techniques. I had one partner who knew exactly how to stimulate me to bring about uh, ejaculation. It had never happened to me in my life until I used cannabis, and I was using it for several months before it happened. And this one particular time, he had his fingers exactly in the right place inside my vagina, and I was leaning back, and my good girl, she's still there, right? I'm leaning back and I'm noticing how good this is feeling in my body, and I'm concentrating. And then my protector kicked in, and she said, and she sat me right up. Like I didn't even, and maybe you can relate to this, ladies, but I didn't even know that gives me the chills. Like I have chills on my body as I'm sharing this. I didn't even have a second to interpret. Um, my body automatically just sat right back up. Like I was back like this, noticing the sensations, feeling the sensations. And then when I realized I was there, I was like, "Oh." And he said to me, and this goes with partners good. We're not just talking about technique, we're talking about good connection, good um like salience between the partners, because it was what he said next that actually allowed my body to let go. And what he said was, he put his hand behind my head. He says, "I got you, baby. I got you." And I leaned my head back and I continued to focus on those sensations. And he said, "You're coming, baby. You're coming. You're coming, baby." And it just gushed out of me. And I burst into tears. It had never happened to me in my entire life. That's how that's why I sold my company and went back to school to get my PhD, because after over 30 years of suffering with orgasm difficulty and the feelings that come with that, the feelings of inadequacy. I mean, I was an elected official with feelings of sexual inadequacy. I could hide it really, really good, but I would stay out of relationships because of this thing. So I sold my company, went back to school for my PhD to study how cannabis could do this. And here I am. This is 6 years. Because I was in 2018, 2019 when this experience I'm sharing with you happened. So and it could, we kind of laughed after. We thought, wow, is this going to be a one-off thing, or is this going to keep happening? And not only did it keep happening, but it would continue. This became one of the ways that I orgasmed consistently in partnership with him. My clitoral stimulation, I wasn't there yet. Like that had so many layers of um, conditioning, including childhood sexual abuse. Like the clitoris for me was a higher level. Like I couldn't get there yet. Anyway, I'm open to any your comments. I mean, anything if this is being helpful to you. Like I'm noticing I'm doing a lot of talking here. So, a relationship that felt good and worked well emotionally, and where sex was approached openly and appreciatively, promoted orgasms. So that is, and then let's go to the conclusion, because this is also I found to be very important. The findings indicate, let's move this up a little bit. The findings indicate that women differ greatly from one another in terms of their tendency and capacity to experience orgasm. The improvements in gender equality and sexual education since the 1970s have not helped women become more orgasmic. I mean, since the 70s. And do you know that we now have in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition that came out in 2022, says that up to 72% of premenopausal women have orgasm difficulty? I mean, to me, we have an epidemic going on that is silenced. And I've done a video about that years ago. The improvements in gender, I'm going to read this one more time because it's so important. The improvements in gender equality and sexual education since the 70s have not helped women become more orgasmic. Neither has the major increase in masturbation habits among women in general. One challenge for future studies is to understand why women value their partner's orgasm more than their own. So we're going to work with this is the let me close this off now. See if I can how I get this thing to I want to close my window. Go. This is it almost feels like heavy. I mean, that's how I'm feeling, heavy reading this to you and feeling the impact of having this problem that goes on and on and on. And not only that, it begins at 18, 19, 20 when many young girls I've even seen 16-year-olds who are beginning to like recognize like where's my orgasm and I need to stimulate. No. Okay, so let's look at now um, how here is we're going to talk about mindfulness and a study on mindfulness meditation based innovations for sexual dysfunctions. And I will tell you that mindfulness alone has not been shown to help women have orgasm, but it has been shown to help women enhance desire and arousal. And think about arousal. So many times women, we have to have, well, for sexual orgasm, you need desire and arousal. But for the non-genitally stimulated orgasm, that we don't really recognize in the realm of sexual, think about it, sexual health, orgasm lives right now in sexual medicine. But if women can orgasm through non-genitally stimulated orgasm, then there's another whole field of training that doesn't even exist yet. Last week, a woman had asked me, uh, I had shared about a study of a case study of a woman, a 33-year-old woman in Israel who had vaginismus and vaginismus, pain during sex, inability to orgasm. And she trained herself through tantric breath work and through tantric breath work and yoga how to have non-genitally stimulated orgasms. And that treated her or healed her from her vaginismus and her pain during sex and her orgasm problem. And they were able to measure through her blood plasma, that it wasn't an objective orgasm. This was it wasn't a subjective orgasm. This was an objective orgasm in the sense that they could measure the orgasmic experience in her blood. Research by Barry Komisarek is a researcher out of Rutgers University who talks about, who's done a lot of research on non-genital stimulated orgasms. Betty Ripple is another one. You can Google these. I can share them. I can share them with you. I'm trying to think of how I can share them with you. Maybe I don't know. I'll think about that, how I can get these to you. But non-genital orgasm is not new for women. It has been 1927. Havelock Ellis wrote 6 books, 6 volumes of the psychology of sex. And you can get those actually online. You can read them online through archive.org, I think it is. I'm reading, I think it's volume 3 about women. But the point is, women have been orgasming through non-genital stimulation for okay, someone's got a comment and I'm going to read this. Let me finish this line of thought. So women have been orgasming through non-genital stimulation. I mean, I don't know how long. I'd have to look going back into history, but it's well known. Anyway, let's read a question here. Thank you for asking a question. My head and it blocks I definitely get in my head and it blocks my orgasm, but only sometimes. I've used marijuana to try to help. I don't know if it's a pressure issue or relationship security issue or something else. Thank you for asking the question. So the question back to you would be, what's coming up? What is, if you were to look at the setting and the circumstance, the which you enter sex, like, are you entering it with safety? Are you like really getting to know ourselves? And this is where like the cannabis can give us an inside, like can help us at least this getting high. Well, what I'm seeing is that we actually are getting into our higher self, into our higher consciousness. So I'd like to hear more. If there was a way that I could actually, maybe we would change these eventually to Zoom, because I would really enjoy being able to converse with you about this exact problem. That when you get into your head and it blocks your orgasm, but only sometimes, feel free to share about, if you want to write another in the chat about like what's coming, like how you get into your head, like where, or begin to notice what's taken you into your head. Is because sometimes it can also be a form of like checking out, that we go into our head, like where we might need to stop. Like if you set the container with your partner, for example, let's, before we start this, if I start going into my head, let me stop and reset myself and check in with my body. Because I think that's, in my experience, that's really hard to do while sex is going on, like while you're being penetrated, or while any activity is going on with sex. I find it really I find it difficult to reset my system while sex is happening. So to invite your partner to, hey, let's just stop for a minute. Let me just recenter. And even if you were just to close your eyes, like with me for a second, and just feel that, like, let me just stop for a second and take a deep breath and feel where I am in my body. And notice if any sensations come up, and really start cueing into that. And you can even practice that when you're not having sex. Like, go to that spot in your mind, and this is where the meditative or the practice comes in, where maybe 5 minutes a day you return to a place where, okay, let me just get recentered. What am I feeling in my body? And start paying attention to what you're feeling in your body when you're not having sex. I'll give you an example of what happens for me. Yesterday, I had to go, I'm having a construction project. I bought a condo, and anyway, I was running around picking up stuff. And I was like, I heard my body say, I'm thirsty. And I heard myself say, yeah, but let's get a drink after. And I'm going to get a drink right now, actually. I heard my mind say, let's get a drink after. We got all these things that we're doing. We're busy. And then I heard myself say, I really need to pee too. And I said, you know what? Let's do it after. Let's just go to Lowe's and get the things you need to do and get it done. So I don't know if any of you can relate to that, but those are the cues to start listening to. Because I ended up coming back to my apartment, coming in here, having a drink of water, going to pee, use the bathroom, and then going to Lowe's. So it's part of maintenance. it's how to maintain, like, being orgasmic. Like, and I don't mean having climax, like having the the actual climax. I'm talking about being in an orgasmic state where we listen to our bodies. We're connected to what's going on. When we get that, when we listen and start, and one of the ways you can start practicing, this is what I used to teach. I used to be not a guidance counselor, but a business counselor for the university for entrepreneurs. And I wrote a book, it's online, called Employee to Entrepreneur, a Mind, Body, Spirit Transition. And it was all the blocks that people had as they were becoming entrepreneurs. And I have a bachelor's in social work and a master's in business, and then a PhD in clinical sexology that I didn't get the PhD till 6 years ago. But the point I wanted to make was, people would come in with the mental blocks around becoming an entrepreneur. And it's really no different with mental blocks with orgasm. It's kind of, maybe the blocks are a little different, but what is inhibiting us is what the issue is. Like, what is blocking us? And these little things I'm sharing with you right now about noticing that you need to go pee and taking care of it, noticing that you're hungry and eating, like really a lot of nourishing is really what's going to help wake. Because remember when I was just sharing earlier about how my head, like when my partner was stimulating me and it was feeling pleasurable, and I naturally flowed into leaning my head back, and then part of me, like, sat up. That's what I'm and I didn't even know I didn't even have the internal cue that was even happening. My body did it automatically, automatically. So we want to find out why is it happening automatically and it interrupt that automatic thing. And that's what cannabis can help with. It's not the only thing. Last week a woman asked, is there anything else? Yes, there are other things. Hypnotic induction is one of the ways that women are learning how to orgasm through non-genital stimulation. And there's research on that from the 70s. They used to call it orgasmic reconditioning. It's never made it. And think about it. If the field has been focused on sexual medicine, sexual medicine means clitoral stimulation and genital stimulation. But if we've got all these different ways that we can orgasm there's another study that came out. A lot of these studies are by his name is Jim Faust, Dr. Jim Faust, Pfaus, and Barry Komisaruk, Komisaruk. Barry has been studying non-genital female orgasm for more than 30 years. Beverly Whipple too. They work together at Rutgers, and they are measured through fMRI research. So they are able to. Dr. Nan Weiss is another name, another sex neuroscientist, and she's a sex therapist out of New Jersey who worked at Rutgers University with Dr. Barry Komisaruk and Dr. Beverly Whipple. Oh, we have another question. I'm glad. Oh, good. Okay. And I'll finish this train of thought here. I'm so glad you're writing. Thank you. They measured through fMRI that non-genitally stimulated orgasm and genitally stimulated orgasm stimulated the same aspects of the brain. And then a more recent study, like I had just shared with you, the one by Dr. Jim Faust, that talked about how the woman who had vaginismus trained herself through tantric breath work. But there's nowhere you can go to get this tantric breath work. Like there's nobody right now that I'm aware of that is certified in teaching tantric breath work for orgasm or hypnotic induction. That's what we're working on is development. I'm working on developing a new field, basically. Orgasmic learning pathways. I have 2 research papers that are in right now for a new neuroregulatory model for female orgasm, because non-genitally stimulated orgasm is real and needs a place. It needs a home, and maybe we can stop sexualizing female orgasm. Okay, let me go back to here, Jessica. Yes, I could try that. I feel I get close, and then if he says something like, "Come for me," okay, that makes sense to me because what I'm hearing is pressure. So you can ask him not to say that. That's what I would suggest. Say, "Hey, I'm working on this, and this is starting," and it gives me the chills. I have like when for some reason that's how my body responds. Like I'll feel sensation going down my back, telling you this, like that it's because it's difficult, right? Like we're conditioned. Maybe it's not going to be difficult for you. I don't know. Maybe I'm making an assumption, but I could try that. I feel like I get close. And then if he says something like, "Come for me, baby," then I can't. I also question if he loves me or not because he hasn't said it yet. That affects me too. It absolutely affects your orgasm. Wow. Whew. Yeah, just take a deep breath. Like that's our orgasm is for me it was like I don't even let me think of how I can even say this. My need to have orgasm was for my wholeness. It was for my completeness as a human being. I couldn't put it down. 4 sex therapists over 30 years. And then when I still had that feeling of sexual inadequacy that was dancing around, that's when I realized that I couldn't solve this problem with a sex therapist. I had been to 4. I couldn't solve it with Betty Dobson, who I went to see and had a private session with in New York City. I couldn't solve it in the traditional ways that we solve. Well, we don't really solve it. Like we just read in the research paper that we have now up to 72% of women having orgasm difficulty, and the number of women having orgasm difficulty hasn't changed in 50 years. So the whole field, we need a new field. I mean, we need to start using non-genitally stimulated orgasms as a way and a guide for genitally stimulated orgasm. I don't even know how long have I been talking? Oh, 45 minutes already. Ah, okay. So that is part of it is that starting to get into the mind space of your orgasm, the mind space, and training these comments that were made about getting into the head, getting into your head and it blocks it. These underlying things like the issues that were just brought up by Jessica. I could try that. I feel like I get close and then he says something like come for me and then I can't because the pressure came on. That's pressure. That's now for a woman who doesn't have orgasm difficulty, that's not pressure. But for a woman who does, who hasn't yet learned that pathway, that still feels like pressure. So, my husband said to me when I was married, have you come yet? Have you come yet? Like irritated. Have you come yet? How do you think that affected my orgasm? So when we hear things like women, and for gentlemen and ladies, there's women in same-sex relationships, although I will tell you that in same-sex relationships, the percentage of women that have orgasm difficulty is, or that, let's say this, in same-sex relationships, women have more orgasms, period. There are still women who don't have orgasm or have orgasm problems that are in same-sex relationships, but the percentage is considerably higher for women who are in same-sex relationships than for heterosexual relationships. And some of it could be because of our conditioning, like I had shared earlier about the woman who allowed her partner to put on the lube and start jackhammering away. Like that's jackhammering away. That doesn't sound like that's going to feel good. And she's definitely, jackhammering away for a woman who's struggles with orgasm is probably not going to work. So if we were to start to talk about a takeaway, let me go back to this mindful meditation here and see if there's something in this study that we want to look at. We've got about 10, 15 minutes left. So I got this one on my screen. Okay. Now a systematic review, what this means is it reviews a number of studies. And in this particular study, if we look down, mindfulness-based therapies are more and more frequently used in the treatment of sexual dysfunctions. I'm reading from the introduction. Therefore, it seems important to access evidence-based data on the clinical efficacy of these interventions. And let's look at what they used. They looked at 3 internet databases and articles describing therapeutic interventions on the basis of mindfulness. There were 15 original research studies. So a systematic review, if you ever look at research and you don't know what they are, a systematic review reviews all the research, like they do a review of the research. Okay, they looked at 15 articles that were included in the review. 4 were devoted to the analysis of the efficiency of the mindfulness-based therapy and the reduction of sexual dysfunction related to pain in the genital pelvic area. Now, I personally think that this sexual passivity has something to do with it, and like using our voice and developing sexual confidence. And I'll tell you, when I interviewed for my research, I interviewed 20 women with orgasm difficulty and 20 women without, who had been part of my research study. There were over 1,000 women completed my survey of women who had difficulty. It was a survey of whether they did or didn't have orgasm difficulty during partnered sex. But the women who were able to orgasm, and I can tell you in partnered sex in my study, 202 out of the 387 or 52% said they had orgasm difficulty during partnered sex. And the largest group of them almost never or never orgasm during partnered sex without cannabis. And the largest group of them almost always or always orgasm with them with their partner during partnered sex. That was statistically significant. It meant that it wasn't by chance that they learned that they orgasmed, that the cannabis had a statistically significant role in improving orgasm function for women who had orgasm difficulty during partnered sex. So it's not, it can be a one-off. I mean, one of the women who I interviewed, what I was talking about originally was this sexual confidence. The women who have their orgasm tend to have sexual confidence. And being one who struggled for 30 years, I can tell you that I know what it felt like. Oh, you can stop now. Yeah, no, it's okay. No, don't worry. It's all right. No, I can understand how that sexual passivity comes in because I lived it. So it's using our voice in these moments where Jessica said, for example, in the question, if he says something like, come for me, this is something to discuss, I would say, outside of when you're having sex, and say, I'm working on my orgasm and here are some things I'm going to want to work on. One of the things that I'm noticing, and and you can say, I know I come sometimes with you, and I'm noticing that when you say, come for me, baby, you can even say, I love that you say that, but I'm finding my mind takes that on as a job. So it's not really working for my mind. So you can approach it with a positive statement. It's in anything that I'm talking about. It may be, I'm using Jessica's example because she came on and she gave me a question to answer. But if you can relate this to your own experience, where if there's something that your partner's doing that you notice is distracting you or isn't working for you, to say, I love when you say this. But right now, we don't have to use a but it's not working for me right now because my brain, you can blame it on your brain. I'm training my brain, and my brain right now is interpreting this as pressure. So and I'm noticing that I'm not orgasming when you say that. So let's wait and say that for me when I become consistent. And I can tell you that the research shows neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to retrain and rewire itself, takes on average, and there's research on this, 8 to 16 weeks. So I have a training program that I'm starting. I have 2 women that are interested in it. If you join on it's only announced right now on my newsletter. So if you were to go to femaleorgasmtraining.com and sign up for our newsletter, you would be privy, or you can send me an email after this and I'll send it to you. It's called Becoming Orgasmic with Medical Cannabis, a 12-week science-based program. And it's based on my own structured practices that I recorded like 500 sessions for myself back in 2020 when I made a commitment to myself, like, I'm going to figure this thing out. Like the sex therapist couldn't figure it out for me. I thought they had the keys, and the truth is there's only one treatment that's actually validated for female orgasm disorder, and that's called directed masturbation. And that is only for women who've never orgasmed. That's from the 1970s. So the bottom line is, for those of you who might know Rinpoche was a guy who healed his gangrene with meditation. And after 3 doctors told him that he needed to cut off his leg or his ankle, and he healed it through meditation, that the Buddha had told him, you're better off like dying and being reborn than going through life without a leg. So meditate. So that's when I began. That's how my pathway started, was with meditation. So let's take this back here. We've got about 7 more minutes here. Okay. So let's look at the results. The study indicated that BMT, mind-based, what is it? MBT. Here it is, mindful-based therapies. That's what MBT stands for. The studies indicated that MBT led to improvements in the subjectively evaluated arousal and desire, sexual satisfaction, and a reduction of fear linked with sexual activity, as well as improving the consistency between the subjectively perceived arousal and genital response in women. The research indicated that MBT did not have a significant change in the reduction of pain during sexual activities, Evidence-based data were found on the efficacy of MBT in the treatment of male erectile dysfunction in study 1. So, the bottom line of this one, it improved arousal and desire, but it didn't improve orgasm. And you might be thinking, well, why am I even talking about this then? I'm trying to close this box. Then why would I even be talking about it? Because arousal and desire are part of it, and the quieting of the mind. This little box is what I'm trying to close this thing. Here we go. Sorry. There we go. Why is it important? Because quieting the mind is a key to allowing your body to give, so your body can have access. Because when we're in our prefrontal cortex, where I started in the beginning of this live stream, our body is monitoring and evaluating. And if we have any body shame issues, like women I see you talking about their lips being, they didn't like how dark they are, or they're worried about their belly, or they're worried about if they smell bad, or all those things are considered threats to your nervous system. So think about this now from a nervous system perspective for this week, for example, is to go forward and think, how is my nervous system right now? Like, pay attention to what you're feeling. I was in Al-Anon years ago, and I had a sponsor who would tell me every 5 minutes, it was for a day, or I forget how long the exercise was, but I had to write down, maybe for one day, every 5 minutes, what I was feeling. Okay, what am I feeling now? And she told me busyness is not a feeling, because I just, I can go get a PhD easier than having an orgasm, right? Like, as someone who had orgasm difficulty, I will tell you that fantasy has also played a significant role in my ability to orgasm, at being one who has had orgasm difficulty. The cannabis has teaching myself how to use it. And going back to the course that I'm starting right now, we're starting it with 10 to 12 women max. It's $29.99, and it's private one-on-one. I have a OBGYN, medical cannabis doctor, Dr. Janester Wilson King, who is leading the cannabis side. And then there's private sessions with her, with myself. And if you want more information, like I said, you can either send me an email to doc@femaleorgasmtraining.com, or join our newsletter, and you can be updated that way. And I'm really grateful that you came here today. And for all who watch this later, I've just found that connecting with the public and public education and women, my sisters, right? I mean, you're like my sisters. Like, we live and breathe in this world together, and struggling with orgasm difficulty, we can have it. And I want to tell one more story. We got 3 more minutes. Yeah, I love to you too, really. I mean, I feel love for you too, honest to God. This one woman, I'll close with this story. So she was the one who I interviewed. She was from South Africa, and a woman who had said that she didn't have difficulty orgasming during partnered sex, and she could always orgasm during sex, but she said she didn't have an orgasm difficulty anymore, even though she responded like women who did. Women who had orgasm difficulty said, I don't orgasm without cannabis, right? So you could see the graphs. I'm happy to share that. That research is on my website, femaleorgasmresearch.org, and you can look at our research and you'll find it there. Anyway, in my interview with her, she told me about how she had been raped as a teenager, and she had never orgasmed in her life. And she had told her partner who she was with, she said, listen, I have this problem. I've never solo partnered, nothing. I've never orgasmed. And he said, try this. And he gave her a hit of cannabis, and she orgasmed the first time she used it. They've been married for this was 6 years ago. They've been married for 15 years. They have 2 teenagers, so they have to be careful using cannabis now in the home with their teenage children. But they only use cannabis before sex, or they always use cannabis before sex. And a lot of women in my study had told me that cannabis lowers the mental walls. I had women share about how One woman said, I asked my last question of the study asked, is there anything else you want to add that I didn't ask you in these 41 questions? And one woman said, I want you to know that before using cannabis, I never orgasmed in my life. So cannabis isn't the only one, but what it is a mind altering. Orgasm itself has been defined for women. Cindy Meston, there's a study in 2004 where a group of sex therapists got together, and I'm going to wrap this up, and they altered states is a part of female orgasm. So that's the part that's left out, right? We think stimulation, desire, orgasm. Thank you for the video. You can absolutely email me. And I'm going to stop then with my email because we're at 11 and I'm actually going to go swim with my grandkids in a few minutes. Question. Yes, you can email additional questions. And I'd like to see if we can make them public because there's so many women that are struggling with this. Like I said, up to 72%. That if there's a way, maybe I can do a blog post with questions that you ask. I'm happy to do that. You can send me your questions following this episode to doc@femaleorgasmtraining.org, and I'll follow up with a blog post and answering the additional questions. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate you being here and for us becoming orgasmic together. All right. Lots of love to you all. Ciao for now. Bye.